Once, long ago, round the River Rhine, in the city of Strasbourg, there was a count by the name of Count Otto. Now, Count Otto lived in this land, and although he was a young, handsome man, he never did find a woman of his liking. In fact, he seemed to stick up his nose at all the local girls. And he got a name during that time. They began to call him Count Stoneheart. As the story goes, there was a time on Christmas Eve where he gathered his friends, and they were going to go for a jolly hunt in the woods. And as they gathered and they went through the woods, and they're galloping along on the horses, he was so excited by the trip that he got too far in front of his friends and got lost in the woods. And soon he got off of his horse, and he found himself in this area of the woods but that no one ever went to. There was no paths there. But legend had it that this was the woods of the Fairy Well. He saw a pool of water in front of him, and quite excitedly wanted to wash his hands in this pool of water. So as he reached down to lave his hands in the water, he realized that the water was much, much warmer than the cool, crisp air around. So he stuck his hands further into the well and began to swirl his hands around. And as he was swirling his hands around and enjoying this warmth, he felt this hand, this small hand, reach up. And his gold ring on his hand, he felt it being taken off by this small hand. Thinking it was his imagination, he pulled his hand up, and there, sure enough, his ring was missing. Now, it was his favorite gold ring that he wore all the time. And he resolved that the very next day he would send his servants to the Fairy Well and have it drained. So he went on home, he rode on home, got to the castle, and retired to his couch. And as he was laying on the couch, thinking about the day's events, trying to drift off and take a nap, he was unable to fall asleep. And suddenly he heard this noise, the baying of the hounds at the gate. Ow! Then he heard the metal portcullis being lifted up, and the sounds of what sounded like the drawbridge being lowered. And then the sounds of little feet coming up the stone staircase into the castle. Then he began to hear strange music and strange sounds from the adjoining room, and the door was burst open, and he entered the room in quite amazement. And there within the room was a large number of fairies, all gathered round, swirling around in colored robes, laughing and singing with strange music. And there in the middle of the room was a fir tree. It was a tree not decorated with candles or toys, but it was decorated with rubies and diamonds and pearls and many, many fancy stones. Now, Count Otto was in quite amazement, but as he listened to the fantastic music, a woman stepped forward. And she said, "Count Otto, my name is Elena. I am the queen of the fairies, and I have come to return to you something which was lost today when you visited the Fairy Well." And she pulled out a box, and inside of the box is what she had to present him. She said, "Count Otto, here." And the box was covered in diamonds. And he opened up the box. Sure enough, there was his gold ring that he had lost in the well, in the Fairy Well. He put it on his finger and quite excitedly danced with Elena. And the two of them danced together. And the fairies swirled around them in celebration. And it wasn't long before the fairies began to drift off. The music was so astonishing to Count Otto, and he was so caught up in the moment that he bent down on one knee and said, "Elena, will you be my wife?" And Elena said, "I will agree to that on one condition. The condition being that you never, ever mention the word death in my presence." And he hastily agreed. And on Christmas Day, they were married. And the townsfolk came out to celebrate their union. And it was a glorious event. They lived together for many years and were very, very happy. But there was one day where they had scheduled a hunt in the woods. Now Count Otto had had all of his horses ready. They were standing by the doorway. He had all of his friends there. All of the servants were set up. And he waited, and he waited. And Elena would not come out of the room. He began to get furious and paced back and forth. Pacing, pacing, pacing. Where is Elena? Where is she? Finally, she emerged from her room. And without hesitation, Count Otto, he said, "Where have you been? We have been waiting so long for you." And then he said, "You could have been a messenger for death." Then he realized what he just said. And with a harsh scream, Elena vanished, gone. Count Otto, he searched the castle, looked everywhere for Elena, his true love. He was no longer known as Stoneheart. He was in love with this beautiful woman, but she was now gone. He searched high and low. He searched the woods. He went to the fairy well. She was gone. He came back to the castle and noticed something there upon the gates, a small handprint, looking like the hand of Elena, was embedded in the stone there at the castle. He searched for a very long time for her, and it got to be Christmas Eve once again. And he had an idea. Now, do we know what the idea might be on Christmas Eve? To bring Elena back. He thought what he might do would be to put up a Christmas tree. The way that he met her the first time was with a Christmas tree. So he decorated the tree, and all could see it in the castle, lit. All the townspeople knew that it was for Elena. And the townspeople, they began to do Christmas trees in honor of Elena. But you know, Elena never did come back. Not the first time, nor any of the other times when he lit the Christmas tree. And many years went by, but the townspeople still, in support of Count Otto and Elena, would set up a Christmas tree, and the tradition would spread. And it wasn't long before the tradition spread all over the world. But eventually Count Otto died, letting his castle fall to ruins. But they say, if you go to the town of Strasbourg and go near the River Rhine, where the castle had been, you will find the ruins of Count Otto's castle. And there, embedded in the stone, you will see a small handprint, still there to this day in the stone. That handprint of Elena. And that is the story of the first Christmas tree.